All right, let's talk about something many of us rarely consider our thoughts as temporary visitors. Think about this for a moment. From the time we wake up to the time we fall asleep, thoughts keep coming, one after the other. They pop up as we brush our teeth, drive to work, stand in line, or even while we're talking with friends. Our minds are constantly churning out thoughts, and they can seem so real, so demanding of our attention that we start to believe they must hold some ultimate truth. But the truth is that they don't. Thoughts are simply temporary experiences that come and go like waves on the surface of the ocean. They arise, peak, and eventually fade. Imagine them as clouds drifting across the sky. No matter how dark or stormy those clouds might look, they're never permanent. They're just passing through, on their way to becoming something else. Yet, despite this natural flow, we tend to grab onto some of these clouds' certain thoughts and insist on making them more than what they are. We cling to them, analyze them, obsess over them, and sometimes even allow them to define us. But have you ever wondered why we do this? Why do we take something so impermanent and treat it like it's etched in stone? One reason is that we confuse the nature of thought with reality itself. When a thought arises, it's easy to believe it's telling us something concrete. Say, for instance, the thought, "I'm not good enough," pops into your mind. Immediately, we tend to believe it. We think this must be true because I thought it, but if we can step back for a moment, we can recognize that the thought, "I'm not good enough," is just a thought. It's no different from the thought, "I'd like a sandwich," or "I wonder if it'll rain tomorrow." The difference is in how much power we decide to give it. Once we understand that thoughts are temporary, we can start to see them from a place of detachment. We no longer have to be swept up in their storylines. Imagine walking down a busy street. People pass by you, some walking fast, some slowly, some talking loudly, others silently lost in thought. And just as we don't attach ourselves to each passerby, we can learn to do the same with our thoughts. We can let them walk on by without feeling the need to stop, investigate, or attach ourselves to them. This doesn't mean we ignore our thoughts completely or deny them space. It means we give them a place in our awareness without letting them control us. For instance, if a thought arises that feels important, maybe it's saying you should call a friend and check on them. You acknowledge it, and maybe you act on it. But it doesn't need to dominate you or weigh you down. You let it come, you let it come, you let it serve its purpose, and then you let it go. It's a visitor, not a tenant. Let's consider this a bit deeper. Thoughts are like seeds floating in the air. Some of them settle and grow into strong trees, and others simply drift on. But we have a choice. We can decide whether to water and nourish certain thoughts, or we can choose to let them move along. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean we have to give it our full attention. Sometimes it's better to simply observe without interacting, to let them pass naturally, and to remain anchored in the present. When we see thoughts for what they really are, passing experiences rather than facts, we're no longer at the mercy of them. We become grounded in something much more solid and less reactive. We start to see the patterns in our thinking and recognize which thoughts repeat, which ones are helpful, and which ones simply drain us. This awareness is like waking up from a dream. Instead of being controlled by thoughts, we get to decide what's worth engaging with. In this way, we transform our relationship with the mind itself. Rather than the mind using us, we learn to use the mind. It becomes a tool rather than a master. This shift might not happen overnight, but every moment we spend recognizing thoughts as temporary visitors, we free ourselves a little more. We're no longer swayed by every opinion, every fear, every self-doubt. We become centered, less distracted, more in touch with our true selves. And so the next time a thought pops into your mind, Instead of grabbing hold of it, try simply noticing it. Watch it rise, watch it rise, and watch it linger, and watch it fall away. This simple act of noticing is a powerful tool for inner peace. After all, the mind can be a wonderful servant, but it's a terrible master. To live freely, we must remember that we are not our thoughts, we are the space in which thoughts come and go. When we see this clearly, we're able to let go and just be. Let's dive into the next piece of this exploration, the simple act of observing your thoughts without judgment. At first it might sound a bit abstract, but I promise you it's one of the most profound tools we have for inner freedom. When you become a witness to your thoughts without judging, criticizing, or reacting to them, you give yourself an extraordinary gift space. It's the space between you and the thought that changes everything. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a river, watching the water flow by. Thoughts are like that river, they keep moving continuously. Sometimes they rush, sometimes they slow down, and sometimes they're turbulent, even overwhelming. But from the riverbank, you're in a position to observe without jumping into the water. You can watch the flow and the patterns, but you don't need to get swept away. When you start to observe your thoughts like this, as if from the riverbank, you realize something: the thoughts themselves are not you. You are the one witnessing them. You're the awareness behind the thought. That distance, however subtle it might seem at first, is transformative. You are no longer entangled, no longer lost in the stories your mind is creating. And when you're not entangled, you're free to respond rather than react, free to choose where to place your attention, and free to let go of anything that doesn't serve you. Now, of course, it's natural for the mind to want to jump in. Sometimes a thought feels so urgent, so true, that you feel compelled to follow it, to dissect it, to try to make sense of it. But if you simply stay with the process of observing, something remarkable happens: the urgency fades. You start to see that the thought isn't a command. It's just one perspective among many. It might carry an emotional charge or a sense of importance. But when you keep observing, you'll find that it eventually loses its grip. In this sense, observation isn't about ignoring the thought, it's about seeing it clearly and without attachment. There's a beautiful simplicity to this process. You're not trying to control your thoughts or push them away. You're allowing them to be as they are, and in that allowing, you're letting go of any need to fix or fight. Think of it like being at a movie. When we're at the cinema, we're engrossed in the story on the screen. But deep down, we know it's just a projection. We can let ourselves feel it, experience it, without believing it's actually happening to us. In the same way, observing your thoughts lets you watch the story without getting caught up in it. As you develop this practice, you may notice that certain thoughts keep recurring. We all have those persistent patterns: self-criticism, doubt, anxiety about the future. But now, instead of resisting or buying into them, you simply observe. When that familiar doubt arises, you see it as a thought. Just that, a thought, no more and no less. There's no need to wrestle with it or try to change it. In this way, observation becomes your sanctuary, a safe distance where you're no longer feeding the patterns that once held you captive. It's a process of gentle curiosity. You're not judging the thought as good or bad, but simply watching, as you might watch waves at the shore. They rise, they peak, they fall, and eventually they dissolve. You realize that you're still here, completely unaffected by the coming and going of these waves. There's a profound stability in that realization. You start to trust that your essence is unchanging, that you are the stillness in which everything moves. Now, let's say a particularly strong emotion arises with a thought: anger, frustration, maybe sadness. When we don't immediately react, we give that emotion space to be felt without acting on it. Observation doesn't mean suppression, it means creating room for things to unfold naturally. With this space we experience emotions fully, allowing them to be without identifying with them. You see, emotions are energy. When we observe them without resistance, they flow through us and eventually fade, leaving us unburdened. Over time, this practice of observing thoughts without judgment transforms your inner landscape. You become less reactive, more grounded. Situations that once triggered you begin to lose their power. You find that instead of reacting impulsively, you respond from a place of clarity. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. Your mind learns that it doesn't have to fight every thought, nor does it have to solve every problem that arises. In this way, observing thoughts without judgment is like standing at the eye of a storm. All around, the winds may howl and the waves may crash, but in the center there is calm. You realize that you are that calm center, always present, always steady, no matter what storms may come. And so each thought, each emotion, becomes an opportunity to deepen your awareness, to find that space of calm within. You learn to live from this space, to act from this space, to engage with life from this space. It's a place of freedom because you're no longer bound by the whims of the mind. As we bring this idea to a close, remember you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness observing them. And in that awareness there is an unshakable peace, always accessible, always yours. Now let's turn our focus to the fascinating concept of detachment, letting go of our habit of clinging to our thoughts. We tend to cling to ideas, beliefs, and narratives as if they're solid, unchangeable truths. But this very clinging is what creates tension, anxiety, and ultimately suffering. Imagine your thoughts as clouds in the sky. Some are light and pleasant, while others are dark and stormy. But whatever they are, clouds simply pass by. They drift, they change shape, and eventually they dissolve. If we can see our thoughts in the same way, as impermanent and ever-changing, then we're one step closer to freedom. Think about it. Most of the time, our minds are busy holding on to thoughts, even ones that don't serve us. Perhaps a thought like, I'm not good enough, or I have to control this situation, crosses your mind. And instead of letting it pass like a cloud, we hold on to it. We give it energy, we replay it, and eventually we start believing it. But what if we allowed these thoughts to move on without grabbing them? What if we let them come and go as naturally as breathing? Detachment isn't about ignoring your thoughts or pretending they don't exist. It's about understanding that they don't define you. They're just passing experiences. Detachment invites you to see the mind's chatter for what it is, a temporary collection of words, sounds, and images. They're not solid. They have no power unless you give it to them. This realization is liberating because it means you don't have to react to every single thought. You don't have to follow every thread your mind spins. You can simply observe, let it be, and let it go. You see, when we're detached, we don't resist thoughts, but we also don't latch onto them. We're free to see them for what they are, and there's a peace in that. Think of a river again. Imagine sitting by the riverbank watching debris float by. You see sticks, leaves, maybe even litter. You can watch them pass without the need to wade in and collect them. You realize they don't affect the river's flow or its purpose. Likewise, when you see thoughts come and go without diving in, you're allowing the natural flow of your mind without letting it control you. This detachment gives you space to choose. When you're not reacting automatically, you have the freedom to respond mindfully. Let's say, for instance, that a thought arises, I should be doing more with my life. Now that thought, if left unchecked, can create stress, self-doubt, maybe even feelings of inadequacy. But if you're practicing detachment, you can observe it, recognize its source, and simply let it pass. You don't have to believe it or act on it. You just let it drift by like a cloud or a leaf on the river, and in this letting go, you find clarity. The beauty of detachment is that it doesn't mean you're apathetic or disinterested. Quite the opposite, you're able to engage with the world more fully because you're not constantly fighting or clinging to every passing thought. Detachment creates a kind of openness. You're present, fully available, but not bound by every thought or impulse. And this openness, this freedom, allows you to see things as they are, rather than through the filter of your attachments and expectations. When we stop holding on so tightly, we discover something incredible: space. Space between thoughts, space between reactions, and in that space lies possibility, creativity, and peace. It's where we can connect to a deeper wisdom. A stillness within that isn't swayed by every breeze of thought. In this stillness, we realize that we don't need to control our thoughts or even fight them. We can just watch them come and go and rest in the knowing that who we truly are is beyond any single thought. This practice of detachment is not about renouncing life. It's about living it with a sense of ease and grace. Imagine how freeing it would feel to move through your day without being pulled in 1,000 directions by every stray thought. You can experience moments fully without needing to judge them, label them, or add them to a list of things to fix. Detachment allows us to be at peace with ourselves and with life as it is. As you practice this, you'll start to notice a shift. Situations that once triggered intense reactions become less consuming. The noise in your mind quiets. You'll find yourself less entangled in the shoulds and musts that once dominated your inner dialogue. Detachment opens the door to a profound sense of calm, because you're no longer trying to control every aspect of your inner and outer world. You're simply allowing life to unfold, knowing that you're equipped to respond from a place of clarity. And here's the beautiful paradox: in letting go of control, you actually gain a deeper sense of empowerment. You are no longer at the mercy of every passing thought or emotional wave. You're grounded in a stillness that can weather any storm. By not reacting to every impulse, you cultivate a stability, a resilience that allows you to face life with courage and compassion. So as we move forward, remember that detachment isn't a loss. It's not a giving up. It's a profound opening away to be fully present without being bound by every thought, every fear, or every desire. It's a freedom that allows you to live with greater joy and less struggle. And it all begins with the simple act of letting go. Letting go is an invitation to experience life in its purest form, without filters, without clinging, without resistance. It's a way of being that brings us closer to ourselves and to the world around us. So let's breathe, let's observe, and let's embrace the power of detachment. In this space of letting go, we find the truth of who we are. Now let's consider one of the most subtle and transformative practices we can undertake: observing without judgment. This may sound simple, but when we dig a little deeper, we see that it goes against much of how we've been conditioned to operate in the world. From a young age, we learn to categorize, label, and judge things as good or bad, right or wrong. And this habit becomes so ingrained that we begin doing it automatically, not just with the world around us, but also with our own inner experiences. Every day, thoughts arise, emotions ebb and flow, and we immediately start placing them in boxes. This is a good thought, that's a bad feeling, I shouldn't be feeling this way. We try to control our minds by assigning value to each thought and experience. But what would happen if, instead of judging, we simply observed? Imagine stepping back and watching your mind as though it were a river flowing by. You're on the riverbank and you're noticing the thoughts, the sensations, the emotions, but you're not jumping in. You're simply observing. Observing without judgment is about letting go of the need to control our experience. When we judge, we're essentially trying to shape our thoughts and feelings to fit our expectations. We want only the good ones, the ones that make us feel safe or powerful or happy. and we want to avoid the bad outcomes that make us feel vulnerable or afraid. But by trying to control, we're actually reinforcing a sense of tension and resistance within ourselves. We become locked in a struggle to maintain only certain states of mind, which can be exhausting. Now imagine instead that you allow every thought and emotion to arise without trying to hold on to it or push it away. You see it, you acknowledge it, and then you let it be. There's an immense freedom in this. The mind begins to relax, because it no longer feels pressured to produce only certain kinds of thoughts or to avoid others. And when we're no longer fighting with our own mind, something remarkable happens. We begin to see ourselves and our experiences with greater clarity. You see, judgment clouds our perception. When we label an emotion as bad, we're adding a layer of meaning that may not be helpful. We're creating a narrative around it, giving it weight, and in doing so, we make it harder to let go. But when we observe without judgment, we see things as they are without the extra baggage. An emotion like fear or anger, for instance, doesn't need to be feared or suppressed. It's just energy moving through us, and if we allow it to pass without adding judgment, it will. Consider how this can transform our relationships as well. Often we judge others based on our own filters and biases. We project our ideas of right and wrong onto them, and in doing so we limit our ability to connect deeply. But if we approach others with this same sense of non-judgmental observation, we start to see them more clearly. We begin to appreciate them for who they are rather than for who we think they should be. This creates a space for genuine understanding and compassion to emerge. Observing without judgment is also a powerful tool for self-acceptance. How often do we criticize ourselves, chastising our minds for being too scattered, too emotional, or too insecure? This constant self-judgment creates a cycle of dissatisfaction, a sense that we're never quite enough. But what if we met ourselves with the same gentleness and non-judgment that we might offer a friend? What if, instead of criticizing, we simply observed? Ah, there's that thought again, we might say. Or, here's that feeling of doubt, we notice it. But we don't judge it. We let it be, and in doing so, we begin to accept ourselves more fully. Over time, this practice of non-judgment brings a profound sense of peace. The mind no longer feels the need to constantly evaluate and categorize every experience. It starts to let go of its tight grip, and a spaciousness begins to open up. In this space, we find room to breathe, room to feel, room to simply be. This is where true freedom lies, not in the elimination of certain thoughts or feelings, but in our ability to be with them without resistance. This doesn't mean that difficult thoughts or emotions will stop arising. They will continue to come, as they always have. But our relationship with them changes. Instead of seeing them as problems to be solved, we see them as visitors passing through our awareness. Some of these visitors may be challenging, others may be comforting, but none of them define us. They're simply part of the flow of life. As we deepen this practice, we also start to understand that our judgments don't actually define reality. A thought labeled bad is still just a thought. A feeling of sadness, even if it's labeled as unwelcome, is still just a feeling. When we stop attaching these labels, we begin to experience life in a more direct and authentic way. We see things as they are without the filters of our preferences and aversions. And this is where true wisdom begins to arise, not from avoiding certain experiences, but from fully embracing them without judgment. This doesn't mean we won't make mistakes or that we won't have preferences. It simply means we won't be ruled by them. We'll have the clarity to make choices from a place of understanding rather than from a place of reactivity. When we're not constantly judging, we're able to respond to life with a calm and steady mind. And so observing without judgment becomes a way of living in harmony with ourselves and the world around us. It's a practice of opening our minds and hearts to the fullness of each moment without the need to control, label, resist. We're simply here present, allowing life to be what it is. And in that allowance, we discover a deeper truth, a truth that lies beyond all judgment, all labels, all categories. So let's embrace this path of observation without judgment. Let's allow our thoughts and emotions to arise and fall without resistance. Let's give ourselves permission to be exactly as we are, and let's meet the world with the same open-hearted acceptance. In doing so, we'll find a freedom that no thought or judgment can touch, a freedom that resides in the heart of simply being. In this space of non-judgment, we are whole, complete, and at peace. This is the true power of letting go. As we approach this final idea, let's think about the profound yet subtle practice of gratitude, not the gratitude we often associate with polite acknowledgments or obligatory thanks, but a deep, genuine gratitude for every aspect of our existence. You see, gratitude is often thought of as something we turn to only when we receive something positive. We say thank you when something goes our way, when we get what we want, or when things align according to our hopes. But this form of gratitude is conditional. It's tied to particular outcomes, to life behaving in a way that suits us. And while there's nothing wrong with feeling thankful when good things come our way, true gratitude goes deeper than that. Imagine for a moment that gratitude wasn't just a reaction to what's pleasant or desired, but a constant undercurrent within us. A quiet and steady acknowledgement of the mystery and beauty of life itself. Gratitude in its highest form isn't about individual moments or possessions or achievements. It's a way of being. It's an approach to life that sees every moment as a gift, even the challenging ones. Consider the idea that every experience in life, every interaction, every feeling, whether it's joy, sadness, frustration, or peace, has something to teach us. When we cultivate gratitude, we're saying yes to life as it is. We're accepting the totality of it. The highs and the lows, the gains and the losses as parts of a greater whole. This is no easy task. Our minds are quick to judge, quick to label certain experiences as good and others as bad. And because of this tendency, we often find ourselves resisting what doesn't fit neatly into our expectations. We close ourselves off to parts of life that we deem undesirable. But if we can open ourselves to everything life brings, without that filter, we start to see that even the so-called difficult moments have value. Gratitude allows us to embrace not just what feels comfortable, but also what challenges us, what pushes us beyond our comfort zones, and what makes us grow. In this light, a disappointment becomes an invitation to find resilience. A loss becomes a chance to understand the impermanence of life. Even in moments of confusion or fear, there's a thread of gratitude that can emerge, reminding us that these moments are part of a larger tapestry. Gratitude transforms our perspective because it encourages us to see beyond the surface. Think about it. When we're in a state of gratitude, we're not merely reacting to each event in isolation. Instead, we start to recognize the interconnectedness of everything. We see that every experience we have is influenced by a vast web of factors, some seen, some unseen. The air we breathe, the food we eat, the relationships we cherish, all of these things are part of a larger system that is constantly interacting. Gratitude helps us see our place within that system, not as isolated beings, but as parts of a beautifully complex whole. Imagine the freedom that comes from living in this state of openness, where every experience, every person, and every moment is accepted fully. Gratitude doesn't mean we won't feel pain, sadness, or frustration, but it allows us to meet those emotions without resistance, to accept them as parts of our human experience. When we are truly grateful, we don't cling to pleasure or avoid pain. We understand that both are transient, that both are simply waves passing through the ocean of our awareness. Now, you might ask, how can I feel grateful in moments of difficulty? How can I say thank you to pain, to loss, to fear? This is perhaps one of the greatest challenges, but it's also the most liberating. When we learn to see even our struggles as opportunities for growth, as parts of a journey toward understanding ourselves and the world more deeply, we free ourselves from the need to control. We begin to trust in the unfolding of our lives, to recognize that every experience has its place, its purpose. This kind of gratitude doesn't ask us to deny our feelings or pretend that everything is perfect. Instead, it invites us to look deeper, to see the lessons and the growth that come even from the difficult parts of life. It allows us to hold both joy and sorrow with equal reverence, knowing that both have something to teach us. When we embody this gratitude, we find that life begins to feel less like a series of events we need to control and more like a journey we can participate in fully. We become less reactive, more accepting, more at peace with the ebb and flow of our days. And this acceptance, this openness, brings with it a profound sense of freedom, a freedom that isn't tied to circumstances, but to our inner state. So as we close this journey, I invite you to carry this sense of gratitude forward with you. Not just gratitude for the moments of joy and triumph, but for the totality of your experience. For the moments of laughter and tears, for the clarity and the confusion, for the times when life feels effortless, and the times when it feels like an uphill climb. In this state of gratitude, we realize that life itself is a gift, in all its beauty and complexity. We don't need to control every moment or resist what we don't understand. We can simply be here, fully present, fully open, embracing life as it comes. And perhaps in that embrace we'll find that everything we've ever truly needed has been here all along.